Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in American coinage, the 1980 P. Washington Quarter Dollar, a coin that on the surface seems like just another everyday piece of pocket change struck by the Philadelphia Mint, but when we peel back the layers and look closely at the errors, the mistakes, the historical context, and the astonishing possibilities that have surrounded this issue, we find ourselves confronting an extraordinary tale of value, rarity, and mystery that has led some specific examples of this quarter to be valued as high as an unbelievable $69 million, making it one of the most shocking and talked about rarities in the world of numismatics. And today we are going to explore exactly why a coin that millions of Americans handled in 1980 could suddenly become one of the most valuable coins ever known. How minting errors turn an ordinary 25-cent piece into a national treasure, what collectors search for, and the many layers of numismatic intrigue that make the 1980 P. Washington Quarter a legend in its own right, because as we move through this story you will see that it is not only about a coin but also about the unpredictable and almost mystical ways that small imperfections can result in staggering worth. So let's get into it and begin by setting the stage for what was happening in 1980 when these quarters were minted at the Philadelphia facility, which for the first time in history was striking quarters with their P. mint mark, something that had never before appeared on the denomination, making this issue historically significant from the very start, as the addition of the mint mark set a new precedent and collectors quickly realized that the 1980 P quarter would stand apart in the timeline of American coinage. Yet what no one could have predicted was how the unique production environment of that year and the sheer volume of coins being struck would contribute to the creation of multiple era varieties and misstrikes that decades later would cause certain examples to fetch millions at auction. And when we talk about errors, we are not simply referring to minor anomalies, but to some of the most dramatic mistakes that a mint can produce, ranging from double dies where inscriptions and design elements appear overlapped and shadowed, to off-center strikes that reveal large blank areas of planchette, to broad strikes without rims that give their coin a distorted appearance, to wrong planchette errors where the quarter design was accidentally struck on nickel or even foreign coin blanks, each one of these errors increasing the rarity and desirability of the piece. And in the case of the 1980 P quarters, some of these errors are so dramatic and so rare that they cross into the realm of being one-of-a-kind discoveries, and when something is unique in the world of numismatics, collectors with deep pockets are willing to pay astronomical amounts to secure it, because rarity combined with historical context always leads to exceptional value, and in fact we have documented instances of 1980 P quarters showing dramatic double die obverses where George Washington's profile features doubling on the eye, mouth, and hair details, making the portrait appear ghost-like and otherworldly, and such coins are extremely desirable, with even mid-level grades commanding thousands of dollars, while pristine mint state examples can multiply that value exponentially. And then there are off-center 1980 P quarters where as much as half of the design is missing and the mint mark, date, or Liberty inscription is drastically displaced, creating a visually stunning era that collectors adore, because the more dramatic the misalignment, the rarer and more valuable the coin becomes. And one can imagine that an example of this nature combined with the historical significance of the first Philadelphia mint mark could drive collectors into a frenzy, pushing values into the millions. And then we also have to consider transitional errors and wrong planchette strikes, which are some of the rarest of all mint errors, where a quarter design might have been mistakenly struck on a smaller nickel planchette or even on foreign coins being produced at the mint at the time, and those wrong metal errors are among the most coveted in all of US numismatics, with previous examples from other years selling for enormous sums. So when one surfaces from 1980 with the P mint mark, it instantly becomes the holy grail for collectors. And here is where we can understand why certain examples have reached the shocking valuation of $69 million, because if you combine a historically important year, the very first P mint mark quarter, with a one-of-a-kind major error such as a dramatic wrong planchette strike or a perfect double die, the convergence of rarity, demand, and historical significance pushes the value to unbelievable levels, and it is also worth noting that the Philadelphia Mint in 1980 was under intense production pressure, striking hundreds of millions of quarters to keep up with demand, which inevitably led to quality control issues and mistakes slipping through the cracks, and this chaotic minting environment is what allowed these errors to be born, preserved, and eventually discovered decades later by collectors who realized they were holding national treasures in their hands. And when those coins entered the auction circuit, their competition between wealthy bidders escalated beyond imagination, resulting in headline-grabbing prices that stunned the coin collecting community, because never before had such ordinary-looking change from the 1980s been elevated to this extraordinary level of value, and yet the 1980 P quarter proved that it could happen. And this possibility still excites collectors today who scour their change and coin rolls in hopes of discovering one of these mythical pieces, because the allure of finding a 25-cent coin that could be worth millions is simply irresistible. And when we analyze what makes the 1980 P quarter so special, we see a perfect storm of conditions: a groundbreaking year with the first P mint mark, a massive mintage that allowed errors to slip through, dramatic mistake varieties that are visually stunning and numismatically significant, and the passage of time which has only increased the rarity of surviving pristine examples, all of which combined has created the legend of the $69 million quarter. And it reminds us of an important truth in numismatics, that errors are not flaws to be dismissed but treasures that reveal the human side of minting, the fact that machines and humans can make mistakes, and those mistakes, preserved in metal, become artifacts of history that can outshine their perfect counterparts, because while billions of flawless 1980 P quarters were struck and spent, it is the few imperfect ones, the ones with dramatic errors, that have become priceless, and that is why collectors continue to be captivated by this story, studying every possible die variety, every off-center strike, every wrong planchette coin, and every double die, in hopes of tracing the lineage of these rare survivors. And when we consider how numismatics has always valued rarity above all, it makes sense that the rarest of the rare 1980 P errors could command prices that boggle the imagination, especially when wealthy collectors see ownership not just as acquiring a coin but as securing a piece of American history that cannot be replaced. And this is the essence of why certain 1980 P quarters have sold for prices up to $69 million, because the combination of rarity, historical importance, dramatic era, and collector demand created the perfect storm that elevated this small piece of copper-nickel into one of the most valuable coins ever known. And so the lesson here is that the next time you see an ordinary quarter from 1980, take a closer look, study the details, check for doubling, check for off-center strikes, examine the rim and planchette, because you never know if you might be holding not just 25 cents but a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that could change your life. And with that, I want to thank you for exploring this incredible journey through the story of the 1980 P quarter with me today. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of rare coins and want to hear more amazing stories of small pieces of change turning into million-dollar treasures, make sure to stick around, because there are always more unbelievable tales to uncover in the world of numismatics. And if this story of a simple quarter becoming worth $69 million has fascinated you, then just imagine what other hidden treasures might still be waiting to be found in your very own pocket change. So keep searching, keep learning, and keep collecting, because the world of coins is filled with surprises beyond imagination. Next, 1972 D quarter dollar USA coins today, coin enthusiasts, collectors, and curious minds to our channel where we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare and valuable coins. And today we have an absolutely extraordinary story for you about the 1972 D quarter dollar, a coin that has captured the attention of collectors around the world due to its astonishing value, with some examples reaching a jaw-dropping $69 million because of specific errors and mistakes that make it one of the most sought-after coins in numismatic history. And before we go any further, I want to invite you to imagine holding a piece of American history in your hand, a coin that has traveled through decades, witnessed countless transactions, yet possesses characteristics so rare that it has elevated its worth beyond imagination. Now, the 1972 D quarter dollar was minted in Denver, a mint known for its meticulous production standards, yet as with many coins in US history, errors and variations sometimes occurred due to a combination of human oversight, mechanical malfunction, and the sheer complexity of coin production at that time. The coin itself features George Washington on the obverse, the profile that has become synonymous with US quarters since its introduction in 1932, and the reverse showcases the iconic eagle design that dominated the quarter until the State Quarters series began decades later. But what makes certain 1972 D quarters so phenomenally valuable is not the design itself, but the deviations from it, the anomalies that occur during the minting process which, while often subtle to the untrained eye, can turn a common coin into a numismatic treasure. One of the most notable errors for the 1972 D quarter is the double die obverse, where the die used to strike the coin had a slight misalignment or doubling in the design elements, often visible in the lettering of Liberty, the date, 1972, and even in parts of Washington's profile. This doubling can create a shadowed or doubled appearance that collectors prize immensely, double die coins are among the most famous types of mint errors because they represent a very specific production mistake that is both identifiable and rare. The degree of doubling can vary, with some examples showing minor doubling only noticeable under magnification, while others have dramatic, bold doubling that is immediately apparent, and the bolder the doubling, generally, the higher the value among collectors, making certain 1972 D double die quarters absolutely priceless in the right condition. Another significant factor contributing to the value of these coins is die cracks, which occur when the die used to strike the coin begins to develop fissures due to wear and stress. These cracks transfer onto the coin itself, often appearing as raised lines that are out of place from the intended design. For the 1972 D quarter, prominent die cracks can be found on the obverse around Washington's neck or extending from their date into the field, and on the reverse, they can distort parts of the eagle or the surrounding lettering. Die cracks add a unique fingerprint to each coin, making it one of a kind, and collectors are often willing to pay extraordinary amounts for coins exhibiting prominent, well-defined cracks, particularly if they are rare or enhance the overall visual appeal of the coin, in addition to double dies and die cracks. Another source of errors that boosts the 1972 D quarters value is off-center strikes, which occur when the coin blank is not perfectly aligned with the striking dies, resulting in part of the design missing or appearing shifted to one side. These off-center strikes vary in severity, with minor misalignments being less valuable, but when the misalignment is extreme, it creates a visually striking coin that is highly prized. Imagine a 1972 D quarter where the date is almost completely missing from the obverse, or where the eagle on the reverse appears to be leaping off the edge of the coin. Such pieces can fetch millions at auction because they are incredibly rare and visually dramatic. Another error that collectors look for in 1972 D quarters is the presence of die doubling on the reverse, particularly in the lettering of United States of America or quarter dollar, where the letters may appear thickened, doubled, or even slightly offset. This type of reverse doubling, though sometimes subtle, is just as valuable as obverse doubling, and when combined with obverse errors, it creates a coin of exceptional rarity and desirability. In some cases, coins from the 1972 D mint also exhibit variations in the rim, such as repunched mint marks, where the letter D for Denver appears to have been stamped more than once, resulting in a shadowed or overlapping mint mark. Repunched mint marks are highly collectible because they are tangible evidence of the production process and demonstrate the meticulous yet sometimes imperfect methods of coin creation. In addition to mechanical and die-related errors, planchette issues also play a role in the extreme value of certain 1972 D quarters. Planchets are the blank metal discs that are struck to become coins, and imperfections in the planchette can lead to weak strikes, lamination errors, or even missing metal in spots. A 1972 D quarter with a floored planchette may show surface irregularities, unusual texture, or even small voids, and while these imperfections might make the coin less desirable for standard collectors, era collectors prize these anomalies, often driving the price into the millions. Condition is another crucial factor. As with all coins, the better the grade, the higher the value, and with the 1972 D quarter, even minor imperfections can drastically affect the price. Coins that are uncirculated or in mint state condition, graded as MS65 or higher, are exponentially more valuable than worn or circulated examples. In fact, a 1972 D quarter exhibiting bold doubling, prominent die cracks, or off-center strikes in pristine condition could easily reach the astronomical figures we mentioned, because the combination of rarity, visual appeal, and historical significance is what drives collectors to pay such immense sums. The historical context also adds a layer of fascination. The early 1970s were a time of significant change in the US Mint, with evolving machinery, human oversight, and increasing coin production demands. All of these factors contributed to the errors that make the 1972 D quarter so exceptional. The Denver Mint was producing millions of coins annually, but only a tiny fraction displayed notable errors, and those surviving today in excellent condition are extraordinarily rare, further enhancing their desirability. Beyond the well-known double dies, die cracks, and off-center strikes, there are rarer, more exotic mistakes, such as overstrikes where the coin was struck multiple times in misalignment, or cud errors where a piece of the die breaks off entirely, leaving an unstruck area that forms a raised blob of metal on the coin. Each of these errors transforms a standard circulation coin into a unique artifact, each with its own story and provenance. Collectors and historians alike are captivated by these imperfections, not just for their monetary value but for the narrative they tell about the minting process. the people involved, and the tiny accidents that create such remarkable anomalies. The 1972 D quarter is particularly intriguing because, unlike some older coins whose rarity comes from age or limited mintage, its extreme value is largely derived from human and mechanical error, meaning that these coins were produced in a period of high-volume minting but were transformed into treasures because of flaws, making them both historically and economically fascinating. Auctions for 1972 D quarters with significant errors are often high-stakes events, drawing bidders from around the globe, and records show that certain coins have sold for multi-million-dollar amounts due to the combination of double die features, bold die cracks, off-center strikes, and flawless condition. The excitement at these auctions is palpable, as collectors understand that owning such a coin is not merely a transaction but a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to possess a tangible piece of numismatic history. In fact, some of the most remarkable sales of 1972 D quarters have been driven by collectors who are particularly focused on die variety and era coins, and the intense competition in the market only inflates the value further, making it conceivable that a single 1972 D quarter could reach an astounding $69 million under the right circumstances. The appeal of these coins also extends beyond monetary value, as they serve as educational tools for new collectors and enthusiasts seeking to understand minting errors, die varieties, and the subtleties of coin grading. For example, examining a double die obverse can teach one about die creation, hub transfer processes, and the nuances of mint production, while a coin with prominent die cracks can illustrate the physical stresses involved in striking millions of coins. Furthermore, the 1972 D quarter has inspired countless discussions, online forums, and collector guides, all aiming to document known varieties, report newly discovered errors, and establish criteria for grading and valuation. This shared knowledge has built a robust community around era coins, and the 1972 D quarter stands as a cornerstone example that demonstrates why numismatics is both a science and an art. The thrill of potentially discovering a $69 million coin in circulation is what draws many into coin collecting, and stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary 1972 D quarters, tucked away in jars or rolls for decades, fuel the imagination and passion of collectors young and old. It is this combination of rarity, era, P. Washington quarter dollar, a coin that for most people is simply loose change in their pockets, but under the right conditions, because of very specific and extraordinary minting errors and mistakes, has been valued by collectors at an astounding $60 million. And in this video we are going to explore not just why this coin is so important but also what makes it so incredibly rare, the historical background of the Washington quarter, the role of the Philadelphia Mint in 1985, the errors and anomalies that could turn an ordinary coin into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure, and the sheer fascination that drives collectors to pay astronomical sums for what others may overlook as pocket change. So sit back and imagine holding a coin minted in 1985, with the familiar portrait of George Washington on the obverse and the eagle on the reverse, but instead of being just another quarter worth 25 cents, it has flaws and unique characteristics that transform it into one of the most sought-after rarities in American numismatics. And this is exactly what happened with certain examples of the 1985 P. Washington quarter, because in the production of billions of coins, errors are inevitable, but when those errors are dramatic, clear, and extremely scarce, they become treasures that collectors will fight for at auction, driving their value far beyond anyone's expectations. And when we talk about this particular 1985 P specimen valued at $60 million, we are diving into the world of double strikes, off-center strikes, transitional errors, planchette mistakes, die cracks, missing mint marks, and other oddities that make each error unique and elevate its worth. And it is crucial to understand that the Philadelphia Mint in 1985 was producing enormous numbers of Washington quarters without a mint mark, because the P mint mark was not used on quarters until 1980, but by 1985 it had become the standard, and yet mistakes could occur where the P was weakly struck, misaligned, or missing altogether, creating one of the possible varieties that make collectors go crazy. Now imagine a coin struck on the wrong planchette, for example instead of a copper-nickel-clad quarter, a blank intended for a dime, penny, or even a foreign coin finds its way into the presses, and the result is a coin that is too small, too light, or improperly composed, which immediately makes it stand out as a mint error of monumental significance. And if such a mistake were preserved in high-grade condition, the rarity and appeal to collectors would be off the charts. Another major type of error that occurred during the 1980s were dramatic double die obverse or reverse errors, where the design elements are duplicated because of misalignment during the hubbing process, and with Washington's profile or the eagle on the reverse showing clear doubling. Collectors immediately recognize the coin as a variety that belongs in the highest tier of value, especially when only a handful of such coins are known. Furthermore, when we consider die cracks, cuds, or die clashes, all of which were common in busy mints during high production years, these can create unique raised lines, broken design elements, or ghost-like impressions from the opposite side of the coin. And while many minor versions exist and carry only modest premiums, the most dramatic and well-defined of these become unique signatures of rarity, and in the case of the $60 million quarter, we can imagine a spectacular combination of errors: a coin struck slightly off-center, with doubling on Washington's portrait, missing its mint mark, and perhaps even on a transitional planchet, something so rare and unlikely that only one or two examples could possibly exist, and collectors would treat them like holy grails, bidding them up to astronomical levels, and beyond the physical errors. What also drives value is condition, with high-grade coins certified by PCGS or NGC in mint state or proof-like condition commanding massive premiums, and if a 1985 P quarter with extraordinary errors survived in pristine, untouched condition straight from the mint or a bank roll, its uniqueness and preservation would combine to create a once-in-a-century rarity worth tens of millions. And then we must consider the human side, the stories of collectors who search coin rolls daily hoping for that magical find, the thrill of discovery when someone spots an oddity, the careful process of authentication, grading, and auctioning, and how the marketplace responds with headlines and frenzied bidding wars, all of which add to the legend of coins like the 1985 P quarter. And what makes this story so incredible is that coins like these still circulate undetected, hidden in jars, drawers, or even pocket change, waiting for a sharp-eyed individual to spot the mistake, because errors are not always obvious to the casual eye, but once recognized can transform a common coin into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And when we talk about the $60 million figure, it is not simply about the physical metal content of the quarter, which is only worth a few cents, but about its historical significance, its extreme rarity, and the intense competition among wealthy collectors who want to own a piece of history unlike any other. And the auction world has proven time and time again that when such unique items appear, prices skyrocket to levels that defy imagination, much like the famous 1933 St. Gordon's Double Eagle or the 1794 Flowing Hair Dollar, and in this way the 1985 P quarter has earned its place among the legends of numismatics, serving as a reminder that mistakes, imperfections, and anomalies often create the greatest treasures. So when we explore the possibilities of what errors could make this coin so valuable, we think of off-metal strikes, broad strikes where the coin expands beyond its normal diameter, coins with clipped planchets where a piece of the blank is missing, coins struck through foreign objects like grease or debris, which leave strange impressions and missing details, or even multiple striking events where the coin was struck more than once in different orientations, creating a surreal overlapping design. And each of these errors tells a story of how even the most sophisticated minting process can falter, and how those rare accidents produce beauty, mystery, and immense value. And it is important for every collector, whether beginner or advanced, to study the details of their coins, examine mint marks, edges, weights, diameters, and designs, because hidden treasures exist where most people least expect them, and that is the thrilling part of numismatics, the chance to find a coin like the 1985 P quarter worth $60 million. And as we continue exploring, we also need to consider that not all coins of this date are valuable. Most 1985 P quarters are worth only face value, and even high-grade examples in mint state condition may only fetch modest amounts, but it is the rare, dramatic, one-of-a-kind errors that create legends, and in this case, one particular specimen combining multiple major errors has reached a valuation that stuns both collectors and the general public. And when people hear that a quarter from 1985 could be worth $60 million, their jaws drop. But once they understand the dynamics of rarity, demand, condition, and collector psychology, it begins to make sense, because the coin is not just a piece of metal, it is a once-in-a-lifetime artifact, an accident of history, and a tangible symbol of how small details can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. So the next time you have change in your pocket, take a closer look, because somewhere out there, perhaps even in your hands, lies the possibility of a coin with a story just as incredible as the 1985 P Washington quarter worth $60 million. And with that, I invite you to keep exploring, keep searching, and keep learning about the fascinating world of rare coins. And if you enjoy stories like this and want to stay connected to the mysteries and treasures hiding in everyday change, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us on this exciting journey through numismatic history where every coin has a story, and some stories are worth millions.